there was some conversation around setting up such a space park in Kerala sometime in 2020.
Yeah, it's already set up.
It's already set up.
It's already set up, and many others are coming up.
Yes, because I think that process had slowed down a little because of COVID, but then I think it's picked up some speed. In light of that response that we've just received from Dr. Somanath J, I wanted to ask you, you've had a certain amount of experience in this particular industry at a worldwide level, you've seen this. What, according to you, would be the ideal scenario for access to funding? Would it be venture capital? Would it be private equity? Would it be a combination of these? Would it be public-private partnerships? Would it be grants? Your take on that.
Thank you. And I actually just want to weave in the question that you asked Husain, because if you're thinking about investing in space, a couple of things. One, you can look at what's been successful already internationally. And globally, there are very mature markets for space. They think about a lot of the infrastructure and the platforms and the services as very mature activities that you can be involved in and you can fund. So there are obviously age-old grants, there are academic spin-offs, something that we've talked a lot about in India and other ways. Academic spin-offs around NASA centers really drive a lot of kind of new ideas and activities. And then they can tap the more traditional venture capital and move up to mezzanine and then ultimately be mature and do, debt capital or go for an IPO and things of that nature. There's also a whole insurance market that helps the private sector manage risk in a way that governments basically insure. A satellite blows up and they're like, do we want to build it again? In the private sector, everything's insured. So yes, there's some disruption, but at least financially, there's some ability to recoup that. And so I would think that India could look to replicate some of those sorts of activities in its very strong financial sector, right? And so that's kind of one thing, and it's all of the above there, but also look at some things that have been very successful already internationally. Get some of the national banks, private sector banks, the insurance companies to consider space as part of their overall portfolio. Then the second question is, what do you want to fund? And that's where I'm going back to that initial question on disruption. And if you're looking at disruption from a commercial point of view, right? As a private company, you're going to do one of basically two general markets. You're either going to try to do something better, cheaper, and sell it to governments, which will continue to be a major part of the ecosystem, and whether that's civilian or military, or do you go after entirely commercial markets, and that you have to create. And so some of the things that I see as really kind of maybe not revolutionary, but certainly impacting is reusability. There's obviously been a lot of focus on reusability in launch, but what about reusability in satellites? These are expensive platforms, right? How do you, maybe even reusability of components? This is just fundamentally a way to make space more cost effective, and traditionally nothing was reusable, everything was expendable. So that across the board reusability, I think, is going to be a major piece of the puzzle. So if you could build something that's reusable, it could be used multiple times, it changes the entire value proposition and in terms of the long-term cost. The second is, I think you can look to the United States, which is a clear leader, and there's a few markets that have been highly successful that don't actually exist at all in India. And what are some of those? Satellite internet, right? Whether it's geostationary with high spot beam Ka satellites, and I don't want to get too technical, or it's some of the new, low Earth orbits, right? That is an entire market that then generates internet connectivity in places that you currently do not have it, that has an incredible amount of follow-on effect. Imagine a fisherman who could get real-time fishing data, and then share it with somebody else. Or perhaps mining companies, or the NISAR data, which NISAR is a U.S. India satellite that's coming online, is going to have incredible real-time soil moisture, right? And then you have to get it to the people that use it. Hey, the timing is right to go plant your seeds today, tomorrow, or yesterday. That sort of thing is going to be really, really valuable. The third thing that I think India needs to look at is terrestrial satellite integration in telecoms networks. Telecoms is one of the biggest sectors globally, and SATCOM is the biggest sector in space. And if you're able to integrate SATCOMs formally into the edge of the network, into the cell phone itself, it changes the entire cost structure of telecommunications, from towers to fiber optics and things of that nature. And the last thing I'll just mention is something as simple as satellite radio. Obviously a very vibrant sector in the United States, very mature. And I can think back to my very first time in India, where World Space launched here, and government regulation, if I may say, killed it because they weren't allowed to put it into cars. And so you had a radio that was satellite based, but they couldn't put it into the car, which was the model. But it's a very, I think, a vibrant market in the United States. So back to you.
No, thanks so much. Now, I do want you to add to that, and just adding another question so that you can have a sort of complete. In addition to the models, which I would like you to speak to, what do you think about the message that's going out, the perception that's created in the international market about the regulatory scenario in India and these options and the incentives that are being created for commercial space, of the growth for commercial space in the country, and what do you think can be done slightly differently to enhance that?
Yeah, so let me go to the first part, and I agree with everything Jacob said. What I would add to that, specifically for India, what we have done, the Department of Defense, is that we have several initiatives that are with India, and there's funding available for Indian companies, startup companies specifically, to engage with U.S. companies to bid on contracts from U.S. Space Force, and then also to prototype and then execute. IndusX is one of the major initiatives. There's also ISAT. There's DIUX, runs different programs, and they'll put out requirements, and they'll allow companies to bid on. Then we have an organization called FedTech. Under the FedTech, within that they have a program I2A. It's specifically focused on India. How that the organization itself pairs up Indian startup companies with American companies. Some of these American companies are startups, and some of them are actually more like what we would say as a prime, well-established defense contractors. So it's kind of like an incubator. It gives a forum for companies to be introduced through these various initiatives, and again get connectivity to American companies. They work together, co-develop, co-produce, and then co-deliver. Now, the second thing on the regulatory, I think one thing we did as space is, again, it's a domain that is evolving at breakneck speeds. When we go out and we field test and deploy certain technologies in the space domain, they can be done within 18 months, which is unheard of in the defense realm, right? If you look at traditional defense programs where you go through a whole procurement cycle, where you work with the country, work on capability development, decide what to get, field it, train on it, that could take about 2 to 3 years, and then depending on where that country is in the line for delivery and execution. But when it comes to space, because we have such a strong reliance on the commercial industry, and the commercial industry is incentivized to produce novel capabilities at a much, much faster rate than in the traditional defense domains, we get really good products, and we get them out at a really good speed. Now, where regulations come into place is that when my office specifically developed the DoD Commercial Integration Strategy 2024. I highly recommend. It's unclassified, available on the internet, and basically what that strategy did was provide a demand signal to commercial industry. Now, this is U.S. commercial industry. When we developed that strategy, we work with the startups. We work with industry. We ask them that, hey, what are the challenges? What barriers do you face? And I believe India is working on something similar. The government is working with these startup companies, these companies that are able to provide space capabilities, to ask them where are the red tapes? Where are the barriers? And it's on them, on the government, to work with other countries work with the international forums to help break down those barriers and make Indian competitive in the global market space.
Thank you. And just wanted to, I think, perhaps add or highlight that when it comes to, because of the fact that there is an element or greater element of risk, at least from a perception standpoint, that's attached to the industry, not only are the initiatives from the government more than welcome, but instances of, where committed contracts are available or conferred upon these startups, either by the government or through these initiatives that you mentioned between the US and in India. There are various such initiatives that are ongoing. Those can then be used as leverage for the perhaps, generating debt or investments in that regard. And very importantly, we did realize from one of the slides that Dr. Somnath had put up to show what are the various kind of dependencies across industries for the space sector. One of the examples that you gave us more recently was the seminar with the automobile industry. But why can't we think of a model where industries that tend to benefit from the space ecosystem, telecom, minerals, healthcare, telemedicine being one of the best use cases in that space, why can't those industries come up and try and become investors so that the ultimate beneficiaries would also be those industries? So we can think of various alternative models to suit the needs of the particular sector. Moving on, I don't know whether Jay and Mr. Suterwala, you'll be able to contribute to this particular question, so I'm directing it to Dr. Somnath, but please do chime in if you have your thoughts. We are part of this session in Invest Karnataka. We do know that Karnataka and Bangalore specifically hold a special place for the space industry, but the question to you, Dr. Somnath, is what more can be done by Karnataka, by the government, and the incentives to be provided here to attract more and more talent, to attract more business and more investment?
The ecosystem which is developed here consists of various skill sets. For example, Bangalore is one of the place where we have the highest number of PhD holders. No, it has already been told, highest number of PhD. The research and development capability ecosystem here is very, very high. Equally important is the manufacturing capability, both in terms of electronics, software, and now into hardware manufacturing also. There are ecosystem getting developed. There are tertiary tier suppliers who are able to do manufacturing, which is environment-friendly manufacturing. Of course, there are other manufacturing which is space sector, which could be little dangerous. So that type of manufacturing ecosystem also developed. Now, what is lacking is integration and supply of full-fledged systems. It's not visible yet. The design people are doing a little bit of packets of design and some corners of the design, and you will also see some of them suppliers of small cards and components and subsystems which are not scaled up to the integration level. You will also see aerospace, aircraft and airline manufacturing which is happening in component level. Okay, not really, but still developments are taking place. Integration goals are there, but I'm still not seeing this is a product of Bangalore. I couldn't see anything. The first satellite coming out of Bangalore, I am yet to see that. Okay, so maybe a liquid engine being manufactured as an integrated engine from Bangalore, or a software package of a high caliber. Of course, there is a huge amount of software skill sets around here, but a solution that is driving software industry, is it still visible? So I will hope that such a company comes up here, will be able to integrate and provide a full-fledged solution in space sector. My goal is that it won't start from a very complex system. It will start from something like a spacecraft. Today there are small satellite building companies, but then I will hope that there is a communication satellite, say 4-ton, 6-ton class of satellite will be built by a company in India and launched from Bangalore. It's one goal because it creates an ecosystem of electronics manufacturing, assembly and testing, propulsion, integration, test facilities, and that ecosystem is existing in some way or the other. And it's the right time to create it. I will also say the manufacturing ecosystem for especially the precise manufacturing, additive manufacturing, design for manufacturing capability, analysis capability, that's all are available in different pockets. It helps you to manufacture high-end products like an engine. Okay, but here the liquid engine manufacturing is again scattered, very well scattered across the country. For example, I know for example, some of the manufacturing, the electro discharge machining, the high-end manufacturing capability doesn't exist in scale in Bangalore. So we need to look at what really lacks here, and can we really complement and create such a manufacturing capability under one umbrella, one roof. Then, in fact, I was trying to look at it, how to do that in the last few years. Possibly this is something which I hope will happen.
Thank you. Jay, any contributions from you on this?
Well, I could be a little provocative, or I could use some experiences from the United States where a handful of American states have also focused on developing the economics around the space economy: Florida, California, Colorado, and Alaska. Many of those states initially target a spaceport of some sort, and some of those spaceports are highly commercial, maybe focused on space tourism or something that's not currently ongoing. That's certainly one idea. The other is, I think there's some applications that, space-based applications that you know work internationally. Space-based radio is one that I just think that in rural areas and elsewhere could really be something where if the government, in its desire to fund startups or something like that, could look at the type of company that is actually utilizing some of this capacity, develop a pilot product that then could be moved nationally or something like that. And then, you know, I'll stop right there. I'll wait to be provocative a little later.
Husain, what about you? If you can add something to this.
I mean, I can go a little off script. I wonder what the economic benefits are. Like, what incentives does the government, right, the local government, give to companies that relocate to Bangalore? I think in the U.S., as space became something, I mean, space has always been cool, but in the last decade in the U.S., space has become really cool. We're doing so many more launches. I mean, you're seeing companies pop up right and left. I mean, children are into space. I got to go see, when I first started in my position, my office sent me out to Vandenberg in California, and I was there for a series of meetings on military base. And I remember the commander was like, hey, there's going to be a rocket launch. Why don't you go check it out? And I went to the beach and standing there by myself and got to see a rocket launch. And with me, there was probably hundreds of Americans out, in different parts near that area looking, also watching. So it excites people. And when you can set up your town, city, government, whatever area, focused on that, I think it will draw in a lot of people. But I think that in the US, it happened as those industries matured. So a company will set up in Colorado and they start generating a lot of revenue. The industry itself is growing in America. More incentives are given by the states, right, at the state level, potentially at the local level, tax breaks, whatever, financial and economic incentives are available. And then people want to move there. They get the people that, personnel that want to actually move to those places and, settle down. So I think that's huge. But I mean, I can't speak to what incentives currently exist in this state. But, if I'm looking at it purely from an economic standpoint, I feel like a lot of these startups, because there's many, but there's not that many. I think there's about 200 Indian space startups, the majority of which are based in Bangalore. And, they don't have, many of them don't have large budgets. So when they get incentives, potentially a grant from the state, hey, if you relocate here or if you have X amount of employees, we will give you X amount of funding. That might be a strategy to not only support the companies that are here, but potentially draw in more companies.
Yeah.
I'll be very brief, I promise. But when we think about space companies and the space economy, many people in the industry think about building widgets or launching or satellites and whatnot. But the real power is in the services that use it. And if you expand their thinking about the space economy into some of those services, mapping or using the data or using the SATCOM, and then utilizing it for value add, I think there's tremendous, absolutely tremendous potential in a state like Karnataka to make that available to add fuel to the rest of the economy and the rest of the startup community.
No, thank you so much. I will just like to end our sort of contribution to this session by making, a specific question, possibly a one-line answer because we're already short of time. Dr. Somnath needs to take a flight. So just one takeaway from this session that everyone should be taking away for each of you. My contribution to that takeaway is something that I've been speaking to for the last about 10 years. Yes, we have a great policy. Yes, the FDI has come into place. And specifically as a lawyer, I'm looking forward to the commercial space activities bill.
So key takeaway? Again, keeping it brief, I think I've personally witnessed over the course of this week being here, there's immense talent in India. I think, there's going to be, the natural trajectory is that the relationship between Indian companies and US companies is going to grow. We have too many similarities. We are democracies. We have a lot of agreements already in place. We have a lot of growth. That is natural. It's organic. And I think the future, it's going to be interesting to see over the next 5 years or potentially 2 years from now, next Aero India, how much the Indian space startup community grows.
The takeaway from this session, I believe there is a vigor of action now in the startup ecosystem in Karnataka. Has already been told that the largest number of space startup companies are here. And they are able to attract investments. They are on the path of scaling up. They are able to make impact and visibility outside the country now. Some of them based in Bangalore, which is a great thing to happen. And also I would like to add here is that me as a representative of the ISRO community, I would like to tell you that ISRO is behind them. Those who think that they are a competitor to the National Space Agency, they are trying to work differently, I think you are mistaken. I want to tell you that ISRO is with them to make sure that the ecosystem grow. It's a policy of the government to ensure that the private ecosystem in this country in space do scale up to greater heights, and we will work in a collaborative mode in which when they scale up to a level where they can handle it, ISRO will come out of it and then look at other tasks which are well defined and cut for the governmental job. So this is very clear. And this clarity was lacking in the past. And the clarity has now been brought, and I would like to tell young people who are envisioning to look at space as a possible venture, I think this is the right time for you to come in, and only the right place to contact here is this Invest Karnataka place, or you are together and make best use of it. Thank you.
India has made tremendous strides in its commercial space journey. It needs to be bold in the next round. We talked about the space bill a little bit earlier. So the real potential is not necessarily in the government systems and markets and whatnot. It's creating information that can be broadly spread throughout the entire economy and society that has tremendous values. So as we're thinking about what that looks like, governments should do what governments do best, provide some funding, some leadership, some infrastructure, but then provide the enabling environment, kind of right-fitted regulation, and then allow private sector to kind of do what it's best, to innovate, think out of the box, be bold, and leapfrog. So I'm really looking forward to the space bill. I think that's the next iteration because it's going to define where we go from here. And as I'll end where I began. We've made incredible strides, but we still have a long way to go, and it's going to be a very, very exciting journey.
And with that, I would really like to thank the panelists and the government of Karnataka, Invest Karnataka, Dr. Somnath, ISRO, the entire national space economy that Dr. Somnath alluded to. And as Jay concluded, these are very interesting times. We've set the base through the policies, through the regulatory scenario, through enabling investment. The next level is now for you, the entrepreneurs, to really make a really big deal out of private commercial space. Thank you very much for this.